Hello and welcome back to PEX Network All Access Low Code 2023. In this webinar called Breaking the Mold with No Code Process Automation, we will hear a success story from Blackpool Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. And I'm delighted to introduce our speakers, Paul Stone, Product Strategist at FlowForma, and Martin McKechnie, Head of Digital Identity and System Administration at Blackpool Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. Paul, Martin, it's over to you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Anna. So maybe Martin, you might like to introduce yourself.
Martin McKechnie. I'm, as Anna said, the Head of Digital Identity and System Administration for Blackpool Teaching Hospitals. Employed in the NHS since 2006.
That's great. And I'm Paul Stone. I'm from a company called FlowForma, where I'm a product strategist, and I align our digital process automation product with our market requirements and market needs. And I work with lots of customers like Blackpool Trust to help them gain maximum value out of our product. And today we're going to talk to Martin about Blackpool's experience in using FlowForma. We'll start off maybe by discussing a little bit about the background of Blackpool Trust so that everybody can understand what the nature is of the company or foundation that we're talking about. So we'll kick off maybe with just a question to Martin. So could you tell us a little bit about Blackpool Teaching Hospitals and what they do?
Yeah, so Blackpool Teaching Hospitals employs roughly 8,000 staff directly, but as an IT function, we support approximately 16,000 staff via various customers, GP practices, out of hours, hospices. As I said, I've been employed in the NHS for 17 years, initially working for a primary care trust, but then trooping to the hospital in 2012. And my role at the trust, as I said, was Head of Digital Identity System Administration. So this is basically two separate functions. One is responsible for managing the overall digital identity of the workforce, so as knowing who everybody is, where they work, in what capacity they're working, and the duration to which they're working. And they're also responsible for provisioning and deprovisioning system accounts. And then the other is providing configuration support for a number of clinical systems that we support, such as setting up wards, day diaries, letter templates, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I know that it's quite a large hospital. I think it must be one of the larger hospitals in the UK. It's quite complicated in that it has several different sites as well. So quite a complicated scenario, and I'm sure the requirements as well for digitization in the hospital are pretty complex. I guess we'll move on to those as we go through the webinar today. So let me move on to a next question here to talk about what kind of challenges did you face in that environment? What challenges motivated you to look for process automation tools specifically?
Yeah, so challenges included a wide range of departments with bespoke processes, a lot of them delivered through paper, email, telephone, that often resulted in requests being overlooked or introducing general delays or mistakes, with extra time being taken to familiarise new staff with each bespoke process. Having such a significant user base operating all of our over the multiple locations and the various processes ranging from completed often, such as daily, to non-routine, which might be monthly. The evidence showed us that often staff would forget how to complete the various bespoke processes, which then in turn would dramatically increase resolution times and increase staff frustration. And lastly, there was additional time incurred by service users needing to phone and email to establish where a particular process was up to, which then often caused additional issues in multi-departmental processes, whereby the requester may then have to contact multiple departments just to see who the process currently sat with.
Yeah, I know from my own interactions with hospitals that it can be quite difficult to find out the status of things. Because like you're saying there, Martin, the information is distributed all through the hospital. It may be stuck in an email account waiting to be processed, and it's very hard to sometimes find out that information. Even in environments, I think, where you have centralized systems like a patient record system, for example, it's still difficult because the process and so on isn't automated. So it's difficult to actually find out where things are at any one point in time.
Absolutely.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about, because I know time is short today, a bit more about where Blackpool teaching hospitals, what were the requirements for a process automation tool? So clearly you had a need, but what did you see as being the solution?
Yeah. So we previously had a bit of experience in using another solution called Infopath, but support for this came to an end for us, and we felt it had a number of shortcomings that required a lot of technical involvement and workarounds to achieve what we needed to. Whereas when we looked at FlowForma, it offered a very simple, intuitive, low code, no code approach. That meant it was really easy to create consistent processes quickly, which we could then delegate those processes out to departments to oversee and manage due to its simple nature. So whilst one of the things we found was whilst it offered these simple functions out of the box, which was great, it still also catered for more complex requirements that we might have, such as the ability to do SQL reading and injection. So another huge benefit is the simplicity of understanding the user permissions applied to each step, so we can be confident that we are adhering to our information governance rules and ensure only those appropriate users can access the certain sets of data. So it was kind of all of those things that was our sort of requirements.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's quite a complex set of requirements there. I imagine you must have been struggling quite a bit with Infopath. I mean, I remember old Infopath, and it's fine, I guess, as a forms tool, but even then you had to do a lot of coding and so on to actually create solutions, and implementing digital processes using Infopath would have been a real struggle, I imagine. So it must have been quite a big step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, because of that, it required a particular skill set. And one of the things that we need is with all the bespoke process, we need to sort of delegate that responsibility out. So we needed a much more simple tool for being able to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. So maybe could you tell us about some of the processes that you needed to automate using a tool?
Yeah, so today I think we've automated approximately 55. It's probably a little bit more than that now. Wow. Many of them within HR, human resources, because there's a lot of complex processes around human resources to do with pay and employment and so on and so forth. Some of the more simple forms we created, they were deployed in a matter of hours, such as our accommodation request forms and raising concerns forms. Other more complex forms that pass through multiple departments and could be like five departments plus. Was our, as I say, our payroll assignment change form and our new starter form. And then some of the forms as well escalate to senior management, such as the chief exec, in the example for requests for agency spend, because we know obviously that's a hot topic at the minute. But then we've got other forms such as clinical safety checks, audit tools that we put in place for following a CQC visit. So yeah, quite a diverse range of processes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, to start off with over 55 processes digitized, that's really doing it at quite a scale. I mean, that's covering off a lot of bases, and you're kind of going to be guaranteed some kind of return on that by investing time into digitizing that many processes. And also I can imagine trying to do that using old tools like Infopath, for example, would have been extremely difficult. I mean, I imagine how long that would have taken to do that. I think it would have been pretty much impossible. So I guess, having a kind of a no-code tool that was quick to deploy, quick to implement, really helped in scaling up what you could do in terms of process automation across the business, across the trust. So so it's interesting to see some of those examples. Maybe we could talk about the outcomes. So at the end of the day, you've digitized 55 processes. What have you seen in terms of benefits of doing that?
So I think the main thing is consistency. We've just got now this consistent approach to completing processes. It provides a lot more familiarization to the staff, the speed and accuracy in which the forms can be completed. reduces the administrative and in the hospital setting, the clinical burden. Again, because of the consistency, it's the quick deployment of the processes from start to finish, and there's less time utilised in chasing where processes are up to, as we explained before, which was one of the biggest issues. It's actually been good because it's prompted departments to review their current internal processes and ensure that they're fit for purpose. So it's kind of gaining traction the more we go with it, because it's departments are seeing these improvements. And lastly, it's as I mentioned before, it's sort of reduced the burden on the in-house development team, because they are freed up to concentrate on other key critical projects, because a lot of it we can just delegate out to the departments to oversee their processes now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I know from dealing with other trusts that IT resources are always strapped for time. They're always busy. There's always too many things to do. So, you know, if you're going to be digitizing processes, you want to be able to do it quickly and easily, and for it not to take too much of your time. And something, of course, that the system allows as well is to maybe pass it out to business users to actually digitize themselves. I know that that's something that was in your plans, but I think in your case it would be starting off with IT and then someday moving it on out into the business community. While we have other clients at like different stages of development who've actually gone past that and moved on and actually have the business people themselves out in the field actually digitizing the processes themselves. So it's interesting to see that, and it's interesting to talk about resources, as resources are always strapped, always tied up, and getting time to actually digitize is really important. You need to be able to do it quickly. But that's great that you've seen those positive outcomes already from those many processes that you digitized. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what's next for Blackpool. So you've started on the process. You've actually gone quite a way with 55 processes digitized already. What you see is kind of the next steps that you'll be taking.
So I guess it's just building on what we've currently got. There's probably thousands of processes out there across the hospital. So it's just we're going for our biggest hitters, the ones that cause us the most headaches, the most complex ones. Start migrating more of those, whilst also simultaneously looking to delegate, as I say, that responsibility out to the departments to oversee them, which will then cause things to be even more efficient. In addition to that, we'll also continue to review any new functionality offered by FlowForma to see how we can make use of that and embed it within our existing and new processes. Potentially functionality that we've seen that we'd like to explore but haven't yet implemented yet, such as like the governance module, for example. So yeah, it's sort of, as I say, it's gaining traction now, and the organisation is seeing the real benefits from it.
Yeah, well, it's great that you got off to a great start. I mean, I think to get that many processes digitized in such a short time frame is really significant, and it kind of gets the snowball rolling, and then it's just a matter of building up that momentum and keeping it going to start digitizing at scale. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, people see a certain return out of digitizing one process, and maybe it's a complex process, and they pat themselves on the back and they say, okay, well, great, we got that done now. We can stop, we can take a breather. But the real trick, I think, with process automation is to digitize at scale. And if you can find a way of doing that by maybe, in your case, you started off in the IT department, digitizing the processes, and then your next steps, you're planning to roll it out to the business to maybe let them take some ownership. And we've other examples in our client base of people who go all in at the outset and actually get the business people to do it from day one. But regardless of what kind of approach you take, at the end of the day, you can measure progress, demonstrate your progress, and kind of use those statistics, if you like, the outcomes that you're seeing, to generate more interest in the business and keep the snowball rolling and gradually increase the level of digitization across the business. Because I think that's really key. If you scale it up, you really see the big rewards. digitizing one process is all well and good, but digitizing many really really gives you a significant multiple on the benefits that you're going to get out of it. So that's great. Thanks very much, Martin, for that. It's been really useful. And maybe if we talk just a little bit about FlowForma. So we're a digital process automation company, and we've got over 200,000 people using a product throughout the world in over 20 countries. And we're dedicated to basically allowing people to digitize themselves without needing specialist skills so that they can actually digitize at scale. And we target our product at primarily business people, but also, of course, IT departments can use it as well. And they might do that because it's so quick. And the reason for that is it's not low code, it's no code. It's really no code, and you only need to do is configure solutions. The solutions as well, it's a little bit different to many process automation tools out there, because it's not just the process, the tasks that you're digitizing here, you're also digitizing the data that's captured. So Martin mentioned earlier on the way that, you can standardize your processes and keep those processes, predictable, performing in a predictable way, time and time again, because the tasks and the paths through the processes are the same every time. But also as well, you can capture data as you're moving along through those processes. So that's the forms element of the system. And it allows you to validate that data as it's being captured, wherever it's being captured. So I think that's a key thing to say about FlowForma. It's not just workflow, it's not just data, it's documents, it's communications, everything about a process that you can think of is included in the process automation solution. Where we've got global recognition. I'm not going to go on and on about FlowForma, you'd be pleased to know, global recognition, etc., etc. And we're also running on the Microsoft platform. So maybe we can talk about that if you have any questions in Q&A, which I think at this point in time, with time being limited, maybe we should move on to that. So do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we do. We also have a poll. Would you like to do a poll now, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can launch our poll. Right, so everyone will be able to see the poll questions on their screen, so please vote, and we could see the results soon. So maybe we'll give a few seconds for the poll, for the results to come in. All right, I can see we've got the responses now. Maybe a few more seconds. Excellent.
Well, I guess no surprise there, productivity is leading. So most people, I guess, would look at process automation as a way to improve productivity. And it's also a way to measure it. That's what I'd add in there, that basically digital processes, you automatically are getting a full audit trail, you know how the process is performing. So it really helps you measure that improvement of productivity. It's interesting, very interesting to see that customer experience is second in line, because that's what we often see as a side benefit of digitizing processes, that actually an unexpected benefit in many cases is that you get an improved customer experience score. And I imagine that's really important in the NHS, because at the end of the day, your patients are your primary concern, and you want to ensure that their experience is as good as possible, right? So yeah, not too surprising to see those votes.
Right, excellent. So we have time for the questions now. Let's look at the first one. What tool was used for managing the workflow of tasks and maintaining the status?
Is that for myself or Martin, in terms of what tool in the hospital was used?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So that question was asked earlier on, so I guess it relates to the to what Martin was saying.
So what tool was used for managing the workflow of tasks and maintenance? So I mean that I'm essentially FlowForma is managing the workflow of tasks and maintaining the status for us. That's kind of one of its benefits, and we can clearly see where a task is up to, the status of it. I don't, unless I'm missing something. It's
yeah. I'm wondering if that came earlier on in the discussion, and the question was related to what previous tool was being used. So I think that from a previous tool perspective, it was a case of InfoPath was being used to capture data. But in terms of tasks, it was more to do, I would imagine, with email chains.
This is it.
Yeah.
It was
email chains and spreadsheet registers, right?
There was such a variety of processes before with various different things. I mean, even when we were discussing InfoPath, that was only maintaining a couple of processes due to the complexity of arranging that, and even that was then managed by a separate in-house development team. So one of the benefits of when we kind of went with FlowForma is that could pass over into more of my sort of system administration team with without the skill set required that was required for InfoPath, because it was like that, like I said, no code approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Another question from Neil. In this journey, did you specifically use any IDP intelligent document processing tools? If yes, did you face any challenges to extract data from forms? How did you manage handwritten docs or forms?
So in terms of all the processes that we've currently automated, we're not running any form of intelligent document processing on those forms just yet.
Yeah, if I could just chime in from other customers that we deal with. We do have customers who use OCR, basically optical character recognition, to actually pull information out of forms and then process them into FlowForma forms. So in other words, they're pulling the data in from an initial document image into a form and then processing it through a workflow or process, right? And the way that's done is that you pull the data in, and you know what? It's not always right, because it's coming in through OCR. So what the form does is actually validates that information and gives you an opportunity to correct it and then process it through a process. So we have a number of clients using that at the moment. So we can talk to you about that in more detail if you give us a call.
Right. Another question from Matthew. Was there a transition from InfoPath like, so Matthew is asking about how was the transition from InfoPath?
Yeah, so it's, as I mentioned before, it was for a lot of it, it was basically just starting from scratch with a process, because it was it gave us an opportunity to review. So as I say, the team that was managing the InfoPath process is a more specialized development team. When we implemented FlowForma, we could see how simple it was to create flows. It was almost like we didn't want to get bogged down with the complexity of InfoPath, trying to convert that into a simple flow, when it was actually easier to just readdress the flow itself with the department to make sure it was how they wanted it to operate, and we could deliver it. So as I say, it's such a simple approach to making flows that you can, for the first time, you can actually directly engage probably more with your customers who are going to be using your flows. In our cases, our HR department, who are usually not very technical, but it was easy for them to visualize the flow and help us create it, and then or work with them to create it. So it was actually easy. It was easy from our perspective because it was such a simple process.
Right. And then another question asking about stuff like, I mean, the number of employees needed to automate 55 processes a year.
Bit of an open-ended question.
Very specific.
Yeah, it's difficult to answer because it's again the simplicity of the approach means that you don't need a centralized team. It can be delegated out to departments. So therefore, a lot of it will be they'll just be incorporating that into their normal sort of business as usual job. As I said before, a process can be literally created in a matter of hours from start to finish. I think our most complex process probably took up maybe a few days, and so it's difficult to put a number on how many you need, because again it depends on how centralized or decentralized you're going to go, how complex your processes are. But I'm hoping that, like I say, just giving some examples, it's I can say it can take a matter of hours to probably a couple of days to do a process.
Right. Thanks a lot, Martin and Paul. Before we finish this webinar, would you like to say anything to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the important message is that, you can digitize processes at scale. It's not very difficult to get started. And you can digitize processes, like Martin was saying, in the space of a few hours. And you don't have a lot to lose, because at the end of the day, you don't need to document out that processes in detail. You can actually straight away build out a process, pass it out to those end users, get them to test and give you feedback. So it allows you to start very quickly. And I think that's, from our point of view, that's the key message we want to get out. Don't know if Martin has anything to add to that.
No, I think I've done enough talking and describing the process. Like I say, it's a straightforward process. That's why I'm used to, in some instances, talking a lot more about more complex systems that we have within the organization. But this, as I say, it does what it says on the tin. It's that straightforward approach to producing your workflows.
Right. We have actually another question that just popped up, and we have a few minutes left. So Paul alluded to using OCR for other clients. Does FlowForma have ICR capabilities for extracting data from unstructured documents or forms? Also, any signature verification capability?
Yeah, so I think with signatures first, FlowForma integrates with DocuSign, so it's able to recognize digital signatures and documents, also request digital signatures and documents via DocuSign. So that's one approach. We also cover off things like wet signatures. We do a lot of work with construction companies where wet signatures are captured out in the field on mobile devices and transferred into forms captured in FlowForma. So from a signature processing point of view, we've got quite a lot of bases covered. Again, give us a call, we'll go through all the detail. And the other thing was, in terms of information gathering, it can process information out of documents and pull it into forms, and then you can manipulate the data once it's inside forms. But again, there's quite a lot to talk about there. So I don't know. I think we're probably not going to have enough time to go through all the detail.
Yeah, we're running out of time, unfortunately. But feel free to reach out to Paul on LinkedIn, and Paul will be able to help you with that. Thank you so much for your conversation. Very interesting. Thanks a lot, Paul and Martin. And I would like to remind our viewers that to join the next session, you will need to go back to the lobby page. Thanks so much, and see you soon.